You can see right now on your screen the defensive radar of Atletico Madrid. It is strong as we would expect. It is your perception of Atletico Madrid. But this season, the results haven't tallied up to that strength. They have won 1, drawn 2 and lost 1. Let's have a little look at the race charts on those games. So the most recent one is the one at the weekend against Villarreal, where ultimately they come out not on top on the race chart, but they get themselves a couple of goals, Atletico Madrid, and just manage the game state. This is interesting in the context of the fact that he takes off Julian Alvarez at half-time. Next one is when they get themselves a little bit mugged by Alaves earlier in the season, Atletico Madrid. So it ends up being 1.03 versus 0.93 and very, very, very few shots in the second half from Alaves, just a defensive performance to block Atleti out, but they do a good job of it and they get the point. Elche is one where Madrid got themselves again into a bit of a mad game where they scored first, then conceded silly about 10-15 minutes later and found that they couldn't kick the door down after that point, so it ends 1-1. And the last little one of this run is the defeat against Espanyol, where Madrid are well ahead in the game, and then Espanyol mug them, get over the line by 2-1. That was the first game of the season. So this is where they find themselves in this moment at Atletico Madrid. Last season in the Champions League, you may well remember that Atletico Madrid went out to Real Madrid in harsh and controversial circumstances. But what did they do in the Swiss system? Well, let's have a little look at this. First game last season was at home. It was against Leipzig. Then they got defeated heavily at Benfica and they were mugged by Lille. I keep saying it, but the French sides were very interesting in the Swiss system last season. And then it was just a series of wins for Atletico Madrid. The pot one team was Paris Saint-Germain, but they played Paris Saint-Germain in November when they were still getting their act together. They went there and got a win though, which is an excellent result in any circumstance. So this is Atletico Madrid. It remains the trophy that Simeone has not won as Atletico Madrid manager. Let's find out more from Miguel.
Joined by Miguel Pereira, author of Passione, which you should definitely check out if you've got any interest whatsoever in Spanish football. It was a delight to read and go through. And as part of that, therefore, I've asked him to come on and talk to us about Atletico Madrid, who've stuttered at the start of the season. They've got the first win of the weekend last time out, Miguel. But they are only 1 win in 4, therefore. And they've not been ripping it up. They've not really even been being unlucky from the outside looking in. They've just got themselves into a bit of a sticky moment. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think we're in the middle of a transition moment in Atletico. There's a lot of rebuilding of the squad, a lot of promising new players coming in this summer who hasn't still had the chance to prove their worth, mainly because of injuries, especially the most two talented signings of the summer that were Alex Baena and Thiago Almada. They haven't been able to perform at their best. They will both be out for this week's match and probably for another couple of weeks ahead. So I think that is disturbing a little bit what Simeone had in plan for this season. And I think we're seeing Simeone starting probably his 4th generation as Atletico Madrid manager, which is absolutely bonkers if you think in modern football that a manager can go as far as have 4 different generations. And the 3 previous one were highly successful, as we know, winning the league, playing Champions League finals, winning the Europa League. And I think they have the quality to become very good again. And I think Liverpool was very lucky to be drawn to play them now instead of playing them in December, for instance, when I think it will probably have the side that's the first 11 and at least the 3 or 4 backup players that he wants the most really into what he thinks the Atletico should be playing.
He's a fascinating character. He's now been there for 14 years. I think when you see him in the short bursts over in England, especially because they're doing well in the Champions League, you see the sort of the unbelievable levels of machismo from him, the sort of the aggression, and you see that in his sides. But you don't last 14 years anywhere if you're not a more complex person than that. He obviously lives and breathes and loves the club, but he's got a real sort of sense, I think, of having matured with it, and his football, whilst it's still, percentage-based football a lot of the time, that's changed, that's moulded as well, when a lot of other managers have lost their edge.
Absolutely. If you see the Simeone side who won the Europa League in the first season he was in charge, and you see the team that played this year or even the previous one, they have very few things in common.
Yeah.
That shows that he's a manager willing to adapt, to evolve. And also, I think he's a manager that understands the club is in. So if you're in a club like Atletico Madrid, you're in a very big club. We're a very big fan base, hardcore fan base, very passionate. But you're playing the same league as Real Madrid and Barcelona. So you had a lot of people expecting to win stuff, but then reality tells you otherwise. And the ability he had to win 2 leagues over the past 12 years against those two juggernauts of football, something that Atletico Madrid haven't been able to do since the 1970s, expresses how good his work has been.
Yeah.
And in Europe as well, we're talking about a club that played 2 Champions League finals over the last 15 years, one of the few clubs that played the Champions League final over the last 10, also winning the Europa League in the process. So they are very competitive. And I think Simeone brought that to the club, a sheer spirit of competitiveness that regardless of the players he has at his disposal, they can be better players, they can be worse players. You think about Falcao, you think about Griezmann, you think about some of the best names in the game. But then you see other sides that weren't as good as that, but they still show the same grit, the same attitude. And I think that's what he brings more than just tactical terms and tactical ideas. It goes beyond that. It enters the spirit of the squad through the heart.